What is good, YouTube? One of my last rebuilding videos before the draft. Today we're going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves and what they should do going into next season with Summer League, NBA draft, and free agency, and trades still waiting to happen. This team was a team that a lot of people predicted that will make the playoffs. They was able to do that. Not only did they do that, they was able to win 47 games with 35 losses. That's a huge improvement over what they did for the last couple years. For the last 14 years, they have never made the playoffs or even came close to making the playoffs, really. And this is the problem, but they was eventually able to figure it out with the number one pick, Andrew Wiggins getting traded for Kevin Love, and also getting another number one pick, in which turned out to be Karl Anthony Towns, who became an all-star and an all-NBA player this season, and then you trade for one of the best top 15 players, possibly top 10, depending on who you ask, and Jimmy Butler, another all-star in the West. And not only was he an all-star, he was also an all-NBA player too. And you think that they will have this numerous success, but then you wonder, they're in the Western Conference. 47 wins is not good enough to be one of the most dominant teams. And obviously you can argue that they would have won more games if Jimmy Butler didn't go after that knee surgery. He didn't look right after the surgery. He didn't look right in the Houston series. He didn't look great defensively. He didn't look dominant offensively, and he wasn't as explosive. That's just what I personally saw. He wasn't the same Jimmy Butler in the postseason. And you can even say that for the whole season. Jimmy Butler got off to a deferring, rocky start. He had a lot of chances to dominate. He had a lot of chances to really impose his will on teams when the season first started. And then as the season kept going on, you start seeing him get more touches. He handled the ball more. He was more of a decision maker. He was more aggressive. And we just seen the different type of Jimmy Butler that we haven't really seen in the first couple months. And once he did that, it locked him up as an all-star. But he played his best basketball possibly of his career in that stretch of December and January. Personally, to me, I think that Jimmy Butler really started getting more comfortable. He started understanding his teammates, and he started realizing that this team needs him to be dominant. This team needs him to have the best. Um, they need him to have his best season, because if you look at the numbers from January, he averaged 22.9. In December, he averaged 26 a game, but in October, he averaged 16. In November, he averaged 17 for the whole month. And then he became that old Jimmy Butler that we all know and love, averaging 20 points a game every single month after the first two. And everybody knew it was going to be a growing pain. Everybody knew he was going to have to get adjusted. He's going to a playing with new personnel. He's playing with two players that used to having the ball in their hands, getting as many touches as they want because they was on a bad team. They can put up the empty stats. But if they wanted to win, they knew they was going to have to use Jimmy Butler a lot. And once he started getting more touches, once he started getting more ball in his hands and getting more confident and getting more adjusted to his teammates, you start seeing the dominant Jimmy Butler that we have all come to know and love. But it all went away once he had that knee surgery that sidelined him for basically the rest of the season, because he only played a couple games for the rest of the month. Now, honestly, they're not going to be able to make that many moves unless they move some of their contracts. Obviously, picking up Jamal Crawford was a good signing, but he didn't really play necessarily the best basketball. Taj Gibson fit right in. He knew his role. He was a vital piece for this team. And, even though they paid him and it might hurt them from getting another superstar free agent, he did do his part and he did do his role. They picked up Derrick Rose at the end of the year. He had a solid season, had a good, better than projected playoffs than a lot of us expected. When they needed him to step up, he did it damn near every game. But they're not going to be able to bring in any big name franchise changing players this year. They was able to do it last year, bringing in Jimmy Butler. They gave the contract extension to Andrew Wiggins. They going to have to pay Karl Anthony Towns within these next 2 years. And then after that, they're basically cap strapped. With all these contracts, the only thing that they can really do is let Jimmy Butler leave. But seeing how well he played as the team got more comfortable with each other, how dominant and how much that they was the third team in the Western Conference at one point. They was on pace for a 55-win season with their first season together with a coach that's not really known for his offense, but also they didn't play the best defense, and they still got potential because Andrew Wiggins wasn't playing his best basketball either, and Karl Anthony Towns wasn't his dominant self even in the playoffs. So they got still more things to figure out, still more things to learn. They still can improve this roster, and they still need more talent on that bench. I feel like they built it quick enough. They wanted to really make the playoffs. They really wanted to get out of that mediocrity, and they made a push for the playoffs and was able to get in. And they was able to win the game. Now it's time to think long term. Now that we have our youth, we have our main core. Now it's time to build around this team and give us a chance to win a championship. Once you make the playoffs, now your next goal is to get out of the first and second round and have a better opportunity to win the ring. Sadly for them, they're in the West with the teams like Houston, like San Antonio, like Golden State Warriors. These are teams that they're going to have to beat just to have an opportunity to go to the finals. It's bull, but hey, it's part of being in the West, and that's the tough part about it is that they got to play against these tough teams just to have a chance to even get to the finals. They got to go against a championship team before then. It's bogus, but it's part of what they know already, and they can compete with anybody, especially when fully healthy. But I felt like they bench wasn't strong. I felt like they needed more talent to really compete, even with the Houston type of teams, which is a championship level team in my own mind. So they obviously not going to be able to sign any big free agents because of giving the money to players like um, Taj Gibson and the role players that they had paid um, some money to. They gave 14 million to Taj Gibson. Andrew Wiggins' new contract gonna kick in, giving him more money, which takes up more salary cap going into next season. Gorgie Dang gets paid 14 million, and he hasn't really been as important as he used to be. And remember, Jimmy Butler is going to be a free agent after next season. So they're going to try to have to figure out should they keep him and should he stay on this roster, or is they going to try to find somebody else that fits the timeline of Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, or is they going to trade Andrew Wiggins because he hasn't really fit in with this team of Butler and Towns. And he hasn't been their best complementary player either. So they have the wings. It's a wing NBA. They have Jimmy Butler, a two-way player that plays hard defensively, can dominate offensively, whether it's scoring, passing, rebounding, or just taking over a game. And they have Towns that can do the same thing besides the defense. And they have the other wing in Wiggins that can create his own shot and get a shot anytime he wants to. But with that being said, with Karl Anthony Towns possibly getting an extension in the next 2 years and Andrew Wiggins kicking in this year, they're stuck. And they're not in a terrible place to be in because their team, their best players still have room to develop and get better, but they don't really have really that much wiggle room to really make a move to put them on that Golden State and Houston level, which is going to be a little disappointment, especially when Jimmy Butler contract expires. They're going to have to try to figure out a way to get over the top. Right now, I understand that Wiggins still needs to develop more. Towns need more developing. And they want to see how much they can get out of this roster as it is, and that might be getting out of the first round. But other than that, I don't really see this team competing for a championship as currently constructed. But the thing that they need to do, that the San Antonios, that the OKCs, that the Golden State Warriors do, is even if they're going to continue to win, they need to mainly focus because they don't have money for free agents. And they're not going to get anybody to take them over top. So they're going to need players later in the draft. And I think this is the main focus because they're not going to be able to sign any free agents, and they really don't have no tradable pieces because most of the players on this roster either aren't worth the money that they're on, or they're too low enough to add up to get another guy. And even though they do have two decent picks at 20 and 48, those picks are not terrible. They can definitely trade both of them for cash if they wanted to. but that won't improve their bench or their roster, and I think that's one of their problems. But getting a Omar Spellman or a Kevin Hutter or a Kyrie Thomas or even a Chandler Hudson, Chandler would be a good fit because they get another wing player. Worst case scenario, they get a Gary Trent Jr. That's a guard, which they really do need to me. Especially if they're not going to keep Jamal Crawford and Derrick Rose in the long term. Um, they have abilities to get a Lonnie Walker if he drops, or they can even try to go for other players later in the draft. Trade down, basically, is what I'm saying. So they have some players that can come in right away and contribute, and that's something they're definitely going to need if they're going to try to continue to stay competitive and try to get out of the first round and try to stay under the luxury tax while still trying to be competitive. They're going to try to have to hit on these picks later and mid in these drafts if they're going to continue to try to make the playoffs. And even if you get Justin Jackson, even if you get Kevin Hervey, and that's in the second round, even if you get worst case scenario a shooter or a 3-and-D guy, or even just a guy that has potential but can come in and give you some energy and give you some effort. You just need the little players. Remember, they're not going to play that much in the playoffs anyway. You just need them to give you some minutes in the regular season. If somebody's tired, you just need them to be able to be one next man up. If somebody goes down, you still want to have players that you trust. You still want to have players that can come in and can play their game. And if you can't sign any big free agents, and even if which they really can't, or you can't trade for them, which they really can't, you're going to have to try to pick up the veterans like a Jamal Crawford, like a Derrick Rose. But also, you're not going to be able to get all those guys because they're going to go to the Clevelands, the Phillies, the Golden States, and they're going to go to the Houstons. And we done seen Houston get players like Brandon Wright, Joe Johnson, and we done seen teams like Philly get Marco Bellinelli and the Ursan Ilyasova. So, Minnesota's in a good space where they got youth. They have the wings. They have the big that can dominate inside. And they have a point guard that can run the offense and take over when he has to, but also keep people involved. So they're not in a bad spot. They're not in the worst spot. They got two All NBA players, two All Stars. But like I said, if they're not going to be able to continue to recruit and accumulate a lot of even lower level free agents or veterans, they're going to have to really value drafting players at those later positions, like the San Antonios and the Golden States, and try to get as much value from those guys with a $1 to $2 to $3 million deals that they can stay under the cap, but also have players that can contribute. I think that should be their number one goal. Is continuing to add development to Karl Anthony Towns defensively, getting him more moves offensively so he can continue to be dominant, continue to stay on top of his game, and also trying to find ways to make Wiggins more comfortable, trying to find him more a better role within his offense, trying to find a way to get him to commit more on the defensive end because this team can only go so far as that big three. Jeff Teague is really a complimentary player. Gorgie Dang is really a complimentary player. The three names that they're building around is Butler, Towns, and Andrew Wiggins. We already know what Jimmy Butler is going to bring, and he proved that in this season. And Towns is still so young and so raw. He still has a lot of room for improvement, even though he's an all-star and an NBA player. I mean, an all NBA player. And Wiggins had one of his worst seasons ever, even though his career is young. And they got to find a way to fit him in while still using him to his abilities and what he's great at, while also integrating him into an offense where he can be a weapon all across the floor. So I think they got a long way to go. I think they're not going to be a championship contender with this nucleus as constructed, but they're not really locked into some ugly contract that's going to stop them from ever getting there. Like a team like Portland, if they pay Nurkic, they're going to be locked into that nucleus. So even though Andrew Wiggins going to make more money starting next season, Towns is still under his rookie deal. Jeff Teague only got a couple years left, not even three. Jimmy Butler is going to be a free agent next year, which is going to be tough because they might have to pay him a lot of money to keep him, especially because he's going into his later 30s. You're going to have to be wary of that. But also, you're not getting the best out of Wiggins and you're not getting the best out of his talents. And that's something that Tom Thibodeau has to do to make this team succeed and reach that other level to get them out of the first round. They proved that they can make the playoffs. They proved that they can compete. Now they got to go out there and show that they can develop, play well as a team, play well together, and improve significantly defensively if they want to be considered a championship contender. They're going to have to play a lot harder, a lot smarter, and work harder and trust each other more on the defensive end. And even if they don't improve, if they just play the way they played last year and become a better unit defensively, better team defensively, this can be one of the top three teams in the Western Conference just by the improvement of Wiggins, Towns, and then their defense. And if they never figure that out, they might be like Cleveland, just good enough to compete, but if they can't stop you, they will lose. And that's what Cleveland been. They won a title, but they lost a lot of these finals because they wasn't unified defensively. And that's something that even if the Wolves can't really get a free agent or they're gonna bring back the same roster, they still have room for improvement on the defensive end, and they still have to find a way to integrate and get the best out of Wiggins, which can still take their ceiling a little bit higher and get them out of the first round. Check out my website, analysisplayground.com, link in the description, comment section below. Check out my Facebook page, analysisplayground.com, link in the description, comment section below, and let me know what you guys think about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Do you think they should trade for somebody? Do you think they should sign somebody? Do you think that they should get rid of Wiggins? Do you think that they should just build around Butler and Towns, even though they in different age gaps? Or do you think that they should bring back this core, get some veterans on that bench, and try to do like I said, try to get the best players you can get and know and really take the scouting serious and try to get players like the McCaws and the Kevon Looney's and the Jordan Bells, guys that you find later in the draft but that can come in and contribute and help you win even though they might be young. You still getting solid contributors off your bench for a cheap salary of $1 to $2 million. They're playing good enough for that value, and you possibly can trade them if they get even better, kind of like a Terry Rozier. Let me know what you guys think. Quinn Wade Basketball Analysis. I'm gone. And check out my website, my Facebook page.